Hello and welcome to Indie Designer Journal episode 14. Today we're going to be looking at some of the mechanics in UnderQuest, my next game that I'll be releasing. We've talked quite a bit about combat mechanics in the past in regards to UnderQuest. This week we're going to be tackling the actual adventuring mechanics of how your character actually works their way through the dungeons. If you're familiar with Iron Helm, you're going to be somewhat familiar with the mechanics in play here. There are a few twists. So we're going to turn the camera around to the table and we're going to actually play through a level. Unfortunately, we're not going to be looking at every aspect. What we're trying to do, or what I'm trying to do right now, is ascertain exactly the right balance. So I'm trying to balance out this deck. It's going to be 24 cards. Because like I said, there's some changes you'll see here in a minute. But what I'm looking for is, I'm trying to get through each dungeon level, attempting to avoid combat as much as I can, and seeing what cards I'm sort of forced to deal with. Like I said, there's 24 cards in the deck. You're going to be drawing 3 instead of 2 each for each room, essentially. And that means you're going to be going through a total of 8 rooms. The trick here is trying to figure out how many situations I'm forcing on a player, how many rest points or campsites that they're going to be able to find. So what I've been doing is playing through this deck, and like I said, I'm not actually doing the combats. I'm just taking notes of each thing as it occurs. Whatever card I'm stuck dealing with, I write down what I'm forced to deal with, or what I choose to deal with, I should say, and for each of the 8 rooms. And then I'm compiling lists and seeing where I need to add or subtract things. Like I've already discovered that there were too many campsites, because I don't want things to be that easy. I don't want people to die frequently, because that's the whole point of making a game like this. So I reduced the number of campsites in the deck, and I increased traps, because that seemed like a fair trade-off. And we're going to test that out now and see how that pans out. And like I said, I'll probably do this a dozen times or more, and then look at the numbers and see if there needs to be any more adjustments. But I think this is a good exercise for other designers, or just for people who are interested to see what kind of work goes on behind the scenes in developing a game like this. Obviously you can't just make a deck and hope it works out. You have to fine-tune it so that it's exactly where you want it to be, and that takes a lot of work. You have to, you're scrapping ideas and changing things, and some of the things you're going to see today might not end up in the final game. But there's a good chance this is probably where the system is heading. Like I said, there could be a couple of changes, but likely the changes are going to be, the types of number of enemies that show up, or things that are, positive or negative in nature. Making those adjustments so that on a consistent basis, players are getting the overall feel the game feels consistent, and that's the most important thing. You want someone to be able to pull your game off the shelf, open it up and play it, and have a good idea of the difficulty level and what they're getting themselves into. If it's very, very swingy, some people really like that, and this is going to be a game with dice and you're drawing cards, so yes, there is luck involved. But like I spoke to in a previous episode, creating those choices for players makes them feel like they're invested into the experience. So I think that's an important thing to keep in mind when you're trying to balance your game out. So I think this would be a good example of kind of the behind the scenes, balancing out a deck of cards to see if it's working properly and you're getting the results that you're looking for. So let's turn this camera around and take a look. Okay, so welcome to the table. What we have here is the cards, or what will be probably titled the Dungeon deck or Adventure deck for UnderQuest. Obviously, these are just blank cards that I got online. Actually, I'll leave a link. I might have done this in a previous episode, but I'm going to leave a link to where you can get these on Amazon. I have them right over here. Let me reach for them. Comes in a pack of 500. And I blast through these all the time designing. Obviously, most of my games are card driven. And you get a box of these. I want to say it's $7.99 for 100 of them. If you got Amazon Prime, it's free shipping. And it's a no-brainer, good deal for doing prototypes like this, and obviously just using Sharpies. So those are my two biggest tools in my toolbox for designing. Anyways, so 24 cards. If you're familiar with Iron Helm, there's 16 cards in that dungeon deck. You are drawing 2 cards. You reveal 1. If you can resolve the first card. If you do, you just discard the second card without looking at it, and you work your way through those 16 cards, and that's a total of 8 rooms per dungeon level. That's Iron Helm. And in Iron Helm, if you choose the second card, if it's an enemy, it's usually worse. If it's a treasure or something positive, it's usually better. And I think that simple mechanic is what makes Iron Helm sing. It's that simple choice you're giving the player, and there's a consequence to that choice. Now, if you draw that first card and it's an enemy and you have low on health, that creates an incredible amount of tension for the player when they have to make that decision. Do they just try to fight that monster, or do they press their luck and draw the next card or reveal the next card with hopes that it's not another enemy, because it's going to be a worse situation? So I wanted to carry that over. I was going to go with a more of a Tin Helm experience, where you draw a card, there's icons on it, and then you reveal the backside of another card to see what those icons do. As clever as that system is, it doesn't create the same level of tension, I think, that is created in the Iron Helm experience. So you'll see in UnderQuest is going to be me trying to pick the aspects of some of my previous designs, the things that I like the most of them, also implementing a bunch of new stuff as well, more narrative and what have you. But anyways, I like to talk too much. Let's get into this. So how this works is, we'll look at the face of one card. That's not really a great example. Here's a better example. So in this card here, this top row is what you resolve if it's the first card you draw and you decide to resolve it. So in this case, you fight a monster. That's this symbol here. It looks like a mushroom, is actually supposed to be a skull. And what monster do you have to fight? Monster number 1. What does that mean? Well, what is going to happen in UnderQuest, unlike Iron Helm would have you just draw a random enemy. As fun as that is, and there's that little tension experience of what are you going to get, it also doesn't allow me as a designer the ability to sort of control what enemies are in each adventure. So this game, UnderQuest, is going to be you as an adventurer going on quests, and each quest is sort of similar to what the adventure packs were attempting to do in Iron Helm, but this is going to be more of a narrative-driven thing. When you hit quest points, you're going to read little entries, and it's going to sort of bring you through a little story. In any case, putting numbers and or letters next to these symbols allows me to control what enemies are in it. So in quest number 1, say, enemy number 1 is going to be different than what enemy number 1 is going to be in the second or third quest, if that makes any sense. I can control the difficulty of each quest in that way, and just sort of control the theme of it. If I want a bunch of undead, or if I want a bunch of, weird conjured creations, or whatever it might be, I can control it. Also, I'm going to throw this out here real quick. UnderQuest is going to be designed in such a way that allows fans of the game to create content for it. I'll get more into details on that in future episodes, but needless to say, building a system like this allows content creators or other designers to design stuff for this system that they can basically make their own enemies, or they can use from all the resources that I will be providing, and build their own adventures, maybe just for themselves or for their friends, or they can post links to it on BGG or what have you. Like I said, I'll get more into details in regards to that in the future. Anyways, again, I keep rambling, but I'm excited about this game, as you can tell. So as you can see, if this is the first card you reveal and you decide to utilize it, you're going to fight enemy 1 and you're going to get treasure G. The higher the number, I guess you'd say higher the letter G, the worse the treasure. The lower the letter, so an A is the best treasure you can get. Again, we're using letters instead of just saying you won, you get pick a sword or get this or blah blah blah. This allows control for each quest, so each quest will have different potential loot. Now, with that being said, let's take a look at actually playing it. One more little thing here. What's this little symbol here? This is another thing I'm working on that's going to happen as well. Let's just start playing, and I'll explain what this does. It's a little easier once we're in game mode. So we shuffle up this deck. This is what you'll be doing. Obviously, this isn't final art. That was a joke. You can actually go on the Facebook page for Grey Gnome Games, or Twitter. Follow us on Twitter or Instagram. And I have already posted the first card, the Sanctuary. It shows you how the cards will end up looking. Anyway, so I did this completely wrong. I'm not playing Tin Helm. Shuffle them up without looking. Down. And we draw 3 cards. These will obviously have some sort of cool illustration on the back. Probably a dungeon door, because I really like the way that looked in Iron Helm. So we start from left to right. Flip the first card over. Well, what do we have here? The book. This is a book. It's not some sort of weird bird. These are going to be random encounters. So it's another thing that's going to be happening in UnderQuest, is there will be a separate book that has random encounters. I think the number I have right now is 54. So there'll be 54 unique random encounters that you'll be able to read, make a decision, and something will happen. That'll be included in the core base game. Like I said, people who are going to be creating content for this can easily make their own random encounters books and post them on BGG, and just sort of allow there to be a lot more variety out there. So anyways, in the same manner, random encounters will get increasingly worse the further you go. So you'd kind of want to do a random encounter if it comes up first. The higher the number, the not so good of a thing it could be. Now I could reverse that completely. I'll have to see how that works in actual gameplay. But in some way or fashion, there's going to be a scale. So some of the random encounters might be potentially even a combat, and some of them are going to be you're going to find something good, and it's going to help you in your little adventure. This is a campsite, little campsite symbol there. Obviously, that's definitely a campsite symbol. So this first card I drew is not a terrible card. So I would probably resolve this card. And if let's say I would do that, I'm going to resolve this card, and then I put these 2 cards into discard. And then for the sake of this video, what we're going to do is maybe I'll write it down. But this is what I've been doing. I've been taking notes on these index cards, each little adventure, what happens in each room, what my results end up being, and then how many total combats, how many treasures did I find, how many random encounters, and then I'm slowly adjusting. I got tons of these. Slowly adjusting, the numbers of campsites and stuff like that till on average, I'm seeing what I want to be seeing. Okay, so let's say I resolve this one. So I put that to the side just so we kind of know. I should write this down, but this is just for the video's sake. So this is what happened in the first room. We did this one. So then we go to the next room. Draw 3 cards. First one's an enemy. Let's say I don't want to fight an enemy, because that's really what I'm trying to do, is see if I can avoid fighting enemies. Now, in real life situation, I might take this. This is an enemy, and then this is a trap over here. This is what happens to you, a poison. Lose some energy or more poison. So if I were to get this card as my 3rd card, I'd be fighting enemy number 6 and getting 2 poison. Not great. So let's just, for the sake of this video, we're gonna attempt to not get into combat. Hopefully, of one of these 2 cards, there has to be something better, right? They can't all be enemies. That's what you think, but sometimes it's not. So in this case, awesome card. So I get a treasure, not a very good treasure, but I find some sort of loot. And the chalice here triggers a quest point. So quest points will have the player read from the quest log. I don't know yet if that's going to be a little pamphlet book for each quest or if it's going to be cards that are numbered. I'm not exactly sure. I have some ideas, but it'll bring you through a little storyline for whatever the quest might be. So this takes the place of the plot cards in Iron Helm, and those kind of took the place of the power cells in Desolate. So I'm sort of building to something here where now, instead of drawing a plot card that has eye icons on it in Iron Helm, and eventually that forces the enemy to come once you have 10 of those icons, and that sort of that's a timer, built-in timer for the game. These quest cups or chalices will be the timer for the game, but instead of a random plot occurring, you will get some sort of narrative-driven little story. And once that's complete, the quest is over. So this will be the new way of keeping time for the game, and so when the quest is over, so you're thinking, well, I kind of liked the plot cards. Well, I loved the plot cards in Iron Helm, so that's why I have random encounters. So the random encounters take the place of the plot cards. Now, Iron Helm only came with, I think, 9 or 10 plot cards to begin with. With all the expansions, you'll probably have upwards of 30 maybe plots if you own everything. I'm not exactly sure. I should probably know that number, but this game will come with 54 random encounters in a book to start, and there'll be more in the future. So right off the bat, more content. So yes, we're going to take the second card. We're not going to look at this one, and we're going to go on. So actually, since it was the second card that we took, I kind of messed that up. We're not doing this one. We'll be doing this one. So we'll get a better treasure, actually, treasure C, and we'll get the quest. So let's do this again real quick. This is actually a nice video because it's allowing me to explain to you some of the things that will be in the game. So here we have treasure and a random encounter. I'm going to take this and go with it and not look at these. Keep going. Ooh, a trap, but there's also another quest point. So I would probably take that. At some point here, I'm gonna be able to explain what these symbols mean. Once I get one that has 2 or 3 cards revealed, or maybe I'll force it at the end if I don't do it. Okay, so here we have the next level, the dungeon, level 5. Okay, we have a campsite and a random encounter. I would probably do this, hoping to avoid some enemies, so that's what we're going to do. So as you can see, thus far we've avoided combat. And that's sort of what I'm going for, because the combat in this game is going to be take a little bit longer than in previous games. It's going to go back and forth with the monster a couple of rounds. It's going to be a little more tactical, more decision making, and because of that, I didn't want the game to last 2 or 3 hours. So I want combat to be extremely difficult. And not extremely difficult, but I want it to be something that's a challenge, and I don't want you to be like, oh, I'm gonna fight this guy every time. I want you to be kind of wary of getting into combat, and that creates tension. When you're afraid to get into combat, that alone creates some tension. Oh, we're getting some good draws here. So well, not great. I'm still gonna take this will be a trap of some sort. Does some damage to me, and then I get a pretty weak treasure, but that's better in my opinion than taking a chance on moving forward. At some point here, we're going to get a run of monsters, and that's going to force us to dive deep into this deck. And this is not the time, so you might get a really clean run. I have not seen a run where I haven't fought a bunch of monsters yet. So here we have another random encounter and a trap. Let's just say I don't want to lose this health, and I'm gonna push my luck here and reveal the next card. Oh, now it's an enemy. That's probably worse. But there is a campsite, so there is some potential for me to want to do this. So now let's take a look at these symbols. Now, how these symbols work is there's a few different ones. There is this symbol here will be some sort of a leaf or something, and that will mean that you will gain an ingredient if 2 cards in this row match. So if I get another green leaf, or herb, or whatever it's going to end up being, symbol, then I will get an ingredient. So on this, just as a bonus, and then this will be a trinket, which is how you keep track of gold, or there could be, as you can see here, an eyeball, which will affect the boss monster. So there still will be eye icons, but they're not going to trigger the boss. They're going to make the boss more difficult based on how many eye icons are created or gained prior to fighting the boss monster. Then you have torches, which are, there's going to be a darkness mechanic. The darker it gets, the more difficult the enemies get. It sort of takes the place of just going down a dungeon level. In the previous game, in Iron Helm and Tin Helm, the lower you went in the dungeon, the more difficult the monsters got just based on the dungeon level. Instead of just doing that, we're going to have a darkness mechanic that'll go down every dungeon level, but there'll be other things that will trigger it, and you'll be able to adjust that by spending oil or torches and things along that lines. So let's say we're going to avoid this monster and we end up with this. So this is a good example of a terrible decision. Obviously I probably should have taken this and just taken a little beating from the trap, but I pushed my luck, and then I got this card, which would have been my second one here. I would have had to fight enemy number 2 and get a campsite, and I was like, oh, I don't want to fight. So then I pushed my luck and I went for the third card. Now I have to fight enemy number 7, and there is a random encounter as well. I did match icons here, so I will get a free ingredient prior to doing the rest of this, but or maybe that'll happen after. Again, I haven't decided, but probably after, maybe as a reward for resolving the card. You'll then gain whatever thing happens here. So I'd have to fight a monster in this situation, a nasty one at that. Okay, and then now we're going into the last dungeon room. Flip. Obviously, I'm taking this one. It's a random encounter and another chalice. So these are the things that I'm doing as a designer behind the scenes, looking at what I come up with each dungeon level, playing through dungeon levels over and over and over. In this case, I got 3 chalices, which is maybe a little more than I want. That'd be a good dungeon level. You only got in one pretty nasty fight. Found a couple of campsites, a few random encounters, so there's going to be a lot of narrative and reading, and so this game's going to be a little bit more involved in that manner. But I hope that gives you a good sense of kind of what the game's going to be like, but also kind of the behind the scenes and the process of making changes along the way. So let's turn this camera back around, and thanks for watching. Thanks again for hanging out with me. Like always, please like and subscribe and leave a comment below. Like I always say, I pretty much reply to every comment that someone leaves that requires a reply. If you have ideas for future episodes, things that you would like to see, like I try to mix things up. I try to show mechanics that I'm working on behind the scenes, and then I try looking at other indie games and looking at the mechanics in there that I think that excel, or that they kind of float to the top. So please leave comments below for suggestions for things you might want to see in future videos. And as always, thank you very much for stopping by. Thanks.